Hello everyone, and welcome back to Haunted Tales. Tonight we journey deep into the heart of darkness. 10 disturbing encounters that will shatter the line between what's real and what should never exist. These are stories whispered in hushed tones by those who have seen the impossible. People who came face to face with creatures that defy science, reason, and sanity itself. Each tale has been carefully reconstructed from verified witness accounts, police archives, and interviews, preserving every chilling detail of what truly happened, while protecting the identities of those who survived. These are not legends, not urban myths. These are testimonies of fear, of survival, and of encounters with the unknown that still haunt those who lived to tell them. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Haunted Tales for daily true horror stories that peel back the veil of reality. And remember, every night hides a secret, every road has a shadow, and sometimes the darkness is already watching. Now let's begin our descent into terror with the first story, one that will make you think twice before traveling alone after dark. The desert at night has a silence that feels alive, a pressure in the air that hums against the ears. Highway 64 cuts through miles of nothingness between Shiprock and Farmington, a straight black scar under the cold stars. It's the kind of road where your radio crackles with static, your phone loses signal, and every noise inside your car becomes too loud. At 2:13 a.m., Sarah Martinez was driving home from a late shift at a clinic in Farmington. She'd done that drive 100 times. 2 hours of desert and dark sky, no lights, no cars, just the low hum of her engine. But that night, the hum began to sound like breathing. She would later tell investigators that everything started with the smell, metallic, like blood and hot iron, faint at first, then sharp enough to sting her throat. She rolled up her windows, checked her dashboard. The air vents blew cold, but the smell stayed. Then she noticed the movement, a flicker of motion outside the driver's window. At 70 miles per hour, something was keeping up with her car. She said it wasn't an animal, not in any way that made sense. It was too tall, its limbs jointed wrong, long and angular, elbows bending backward. In her headlights, she caught flashes of pale, almost gray skin. It ran close enough that she could see its face, stretched thin, almost human, but with a mouth that opened far too wide, as though the skin was straining to stay attached. When she pressed harder on the gas, it did too. The speedometer hit 85, then 90. It stayed right beside her door. The desert outside became a blur. Her car's engine roared, but over it she heard scratching, fingernails or claws dragging along the side panel. She tried not to look, but her eyes were pulled toward the window. The thing was smiling. Sarah's dash cam, a cheap black model her brother had given her after a minor accident months before, recorded everything. At least most of it. The footage that later surfaced on the dark web showed her headlights cutting through the black, her terrified breathing, and a pale figure visible for just 2 frames. Something humanoid, hunched low, running faster than any person could. Then, static. She called 911 at 2:18 a.m., screaming that something was chasing her. The call lasted 43 seconds before dropping. When state police found her car 10 miles east of Shiprock, it was still running. Headlights on, doors locked, hazard lights blinking. Sarah was inside, shaking, seatbelt still on, eyes wide and unblinking. She couldn't speak for hours. The side of her car bore long scratches, 5 parallel grooves, too deep for fingernails, too uneven for tools. The forensic team tested the residue. It wasn't paint. It wasn't metal. It was organic. Under UV light, the streaks fluoresced faintly green. The police report from that night is heavily redacted, but what remains paints a disturbing picture. One trooper wrote, "Driver reports humanoid entity keeping pace with her vehicle at high speed." Description inconsistent with known fauna. Possible psychological episode due to fatigue. But physical markings on vehicle contradict assumption. Another added, "Subject complained of auditory hallucinations. Whispers outside car, though all windows closed." Witness refused to sleep, claimed she would hear it breathing if she closed her eyes. Sarah eventually recovered enough to talk to investigators, but her account never changed. She said it spoke to her, not in words, in mimicry. Her own voice echoed back from outside the car. "Sarah, stop the car," when she refused. It began laughing. 3 months later, in June 2017, a long-haul trucker named Dennis Cole filed a near-identical report while traveling the same route at 3 a.m. He said something ran alongside his trailer for almost a mile, keeping just out of the beams. He described it as skinny as a shadow, but with legs like a man's. He tried to radio dispatch, but his CB went dead. When he stopped at a gas station in Farmington, he noticed streaks on the side of his rig. Long, narrow handprints smeared in something brownish red. He assumed it was mud until the attendant pointed out the hand shape. It was too long. Local Navajo residents weren't surprised. They've known that land for generations, and they say some things aren't meant to be chased, or even spoken of after dark. One elder told a journalist later that year, "Out there, the wind carries more than sand. Sometimes it carries a voice that sounds like your own. That's how it finds you." Paranormal researchers began connecting Sarah's story with older reports. Decades of strange encounters in that same patch of desert. In 1979, a pair of tourists from Colorado claimed something on all fours followed their RV for nearly 10 minutes near the same coordinates. In 1995, a local deputy went missing on patrol. His dashcam was recovered 2 days later. The footage ended with a blur of movement and his voice saying, "It's right beside me." The Navajo police eventually stopped releasing reports publicly. But law enforcement officers privately admit there have been more than a dozen similar incidents since the late 2000s. In 2019, a group of paranormal investigators, the kind who chase legends with night vision cameras and EMF meters, visited the same stretch of highway. Their channel had a modest following until that night. Around 2:40 a.m., their footage captured a shape moving behind their SUV, thin, almost skeletal, darting in and out of the headlights. The team later claimed their vehicle was struck twice by something unseen. The final clip from their live stream showed one of them whispering, "It's beside us." Then, the camera dropped. The video cut to static. The channel was deleted 2 days later. Sarah moved away from New Mexico after her encounter. She refused all interviews, but a journalist tracked her down in Oregon years later. She worked nights still, part-time nurse, quiet life, but she never drove after dark again. When asked what she remembered most, she didn't mention the face or the scratching. She said, "It was the sound of its feet. Not like running, more like dragging, and the way the road lights hit its eyes. They weren't glowing. They were reflecting mine back at me." Locals still talk about the runner, the desert cryptid that stalks the lonely highways of Shiprock. Some say it's a spirit that imitates travelers. Others say it's a flesh and blood predator that knows the desert better than we ever will. In 2022, a trooper responding to a stalled car in the same region reported seeing a tall figure moving fast across the road, too smooth to be human. His dashcam caught a blur and a single frame of motion. Pale, elongated, almost featureless. The department later called it a digital artifact. They say desert air never forgets. Heat by day, silence by night. It holds every scream, every radio call, every skid mark that never got explained. After Sarah's case went public on a few paranormal forums, people started coming forward. Most were dismissed as copycats, but when investigators compared the timing, the details matched too closely to ignore. One post came from a man calling himself Red Desert Trucker. He wrote that in 2018, about a year after Sarah's incident, he was hauling construction materials down the same route. His story started with a smell too, but not metallic this time. Like wet fur, he wrote. Like a dog that's been in a storm. He thought maybe an animal had gotten caught under his trailer. When he pulled over to check, the smell got stronger, and the desert wind went still. Then behind him he heard running. Not footsteps, not hooves. Slaps, like palms hitting asphalt. He jumped back into the cab, locked the doors, and started rolling again. In his side mirror, something crouched on the road shoulder. Long arms resting on the ground, head cocked sideways like it was listening. He never filed a police report. He said he didn't need proof. Some things, he wrote, don't want to be chased, only noticed. A retired officer, Lieutenant Roger Hale, agreed to speak anonymously for a local documentary that never aired. His department had handled 3 similar 911 calls within 5 years, all late at night, all between mile markers 41 and 56, the stretch locals now whisper about. Hale said that when they checked one caller's vehicle, the scratches had residue that tested positive for human epidermal tissue, but stretched to a strand structure that didn't match any database. Hale laughed once during the interview. Not amusement, more like disbelief. "You know what keeps me up? The prints. We found handprints on a window about 6 feet off the ground. Unless that driver picked up a circus acrobat, there's no way." The documentary crew said Hale's radio recorded interference whenever they drove that section of highway. Bursts of static. There's a kind of darkness in the Midwest that doesn't feel natural. Not the comforting dark of nightfall, but something deeper, the kind that seems to listen back. The woods around Elkhorn, Wisconsin, are the kind you don't get lost in accidentally. Pine and birch crowd the narrow roads, branches knitting overhead so thickly that even moonlight struggles to slip through. In the distance, you can hear coyotes, owls, and the constant whisper of wind through the leaves. But sometimes when the air goes still, there's a different kind of sound, a cry that doesn't belong to any animal anyone's ever caught. Locals call it the Bray Road scream. The first documented case came from Linda Godfrey, a reporter for the Walworth County Week who began collecting eyewitness accounts in 1991. She'd been covering a series of strange animal mutilations when residents began reporting something far stranger, a creature walking upright through the woods, covered in dark fur, with a face like both man and wolf. But long before Linda's articles, before the story went national, there were whispers, sheriff's logs, half-erased reports, and one recording the department still refuses to release. On the night of October 23, 1991, a man named Tom Becker, 42, was driving home from a friend's farm just outside Elkhorn. He'd had a few beers, but not enough to dull his reflexes. At 11:47 p.m., his truck swerved suddenly, leaving deep ruts in the mud by the roadside. When deputies arrived, they found Becker shaking, clutching his shotgun across his chest. He told them something had run across the road on 2 legs. His words were slurred but terrified. It wasn't no deer. Thing had shoulders, looked right at me. He described it as tall, 7 feet maybe more, covered in gray-black fur, eyes reflecting red in the headlights. When it crossed in front of him, it didn't run like a man. Its legs bent wrong, more like a dog's hind legs, but the gait was smooth, powerful. He said he heard a scream just before it vanished into the trees. The deputies wrote it off as alcohol, though one later admitted in private that the sound Becker described matched something he'd heard himself a few weeks earlier while patrolling near the same area. 2 weeks later, a group of high schoolers parked off Bray Road for a late-night hangout. One of them, Amanda Hill, gave her account to investigators after the story broke. Her voice on the old cassette tape is thin, barely audible over the background hum of the interview room. "We were just sitting there, radio on low, and we heard this scream. It sounded like a woman, but wrong, like it started human, then turned into something else. I thought maybe someone was hurt, so I got out with a flashlight. The woods were quiet, too quiet. Then I saw eyes, red like brake lights, too high off the ground. I yelled, and it came closer. The others screamed for her to get back in the car. The creature stepped out far enough for the headlights to catch it. Matted fur, long muzzle, broad chest and hands, not paws, at the end of its forearms. It crouched, sniffed the air, and let out a sound that made all of them cover their ears. Amanda said the noise felt physical, like the air itself was vibrating. They sped off, tires spitting gravel, while something chased them down the tree line. They could hear it keeping up, heavy rhythmic thuds. When they reached the main road, it stopped following. Linda Godfrey's articles made national news. "Beast of Bray Road," the headlines called it. Reporters from Inside Edition and Unsolved Mysteries came to Elkhorn, but the locals didn't laugh. Too many of them had heard the scream. Hunters found deer carcasses split open neatly, organs missing, no bullet wounds. Farmers reported livestock dragged from pens with no sign of struggle. In one field, prints were found, not paw prints, not boots, something in between. Each was 12 inches long, with claw marks curling forward instead of back. One deputy, Alan Graves, documented the findings, but later quit the force. When a journalist found him years later in a diner outside Janesville, he agreed to talk only off the record. We followed the prints one night. 2 miles into the woods, then they just stopped. Dead stop. Like it leapt into the trees or vanished straight up. I heard breathing, heavy, wet breathing, from somewhere close. Then that scream. I've been to car crashes, suicides, you name it. Never heard anything like it. It's not a sound that belongs in this world. By winter, sightings slowed, but the forest didn't forget. Hikers still heard distant cries echoing through the cold. In December, a family driving home from midnight mass hit something on Bray Road. They swore it wasn't a deer. Too tall, too solid. When they got out, there was blood on the bumper, but no carcass, no trail. A week later, the same family reported deep gouges on their front door. They lived miles from the site of the impact. The sheriff's office told them it was vandals. The father installed motion lights. They went off at 3:12 a.m. every night for a month. In early 1992, 2 hunters disappeared near Whitewater Lake, about 15 miles from Elkhorn. Their rifles were found leaning against a tree. The search team found torn fabric, hunting gear shredded and stained, but no tracks leading away. The coroner's report listed exposure as cause of death when their bodies turned up weeks later. But one deputy claimed their faces were wrong, like something had been pulling at them. The bones didn't sit right. Modern investigators believe the creature could be a misidentified bear, wolf, or even a person in costume. But those who've stood in those woods at night know better. There's a heaviness there, a pressure behind the trees that feels alive. In 2005, a wildlife photographer named Chris Nolan tried to capture proof. He set up motion cameras across Bray Road. At 2:47 a.m., one triggered. The footage showed the outline of something tall, bent forward, eyes reflecting red, fur clinging to rain-soaked skin. The clip lasted less than 3 seconds before the feed cut out. The SD card was later found melted inside the camera housing. Today, locals avoid Bray Road after dark. Truckers who pass through say they still hear that scream sometimes. Distant at first, then closer, like the woods themselves are exhaling. One 911 call from 2017 recorded a driver whispering, "It's in the ditch. I can see its eyes." The dispatcher lost the signal mid-sentence. The car was found the next morning, headlights still on, driver's door open, no one inside. The engine block was torn open as if something had clawed through solid metal. The file was marked unsolved. Scientists dismissed the beast of Bray Road as rural folklore, mass hysteria, or misidentified wildlife. But every so often, campers still report the same thing, a scream that starts high, almost human, then descends into a guttural growl that makes the trees shake. And sometimes, when the night is perfectly still, people say they hear something else behind it, breathing low and wet, followed by the sound of footsteps that end just before they reach your tent, the kind of sound that tells you you're being watched. And whatever's out there isn't hungry for food, it's hungry for fear. The sound didn't fade. It grew closer. Each echo through the forest came with a vibration, like the growl of an engine trapped under the earth. The deputy's flashlight trembled in his hand as the beam cut through fog thick as smoke. Behind him, Tom was whispering prayers, voice breaking between words. Then came the breathing. It wasn't human. Deep, wet, heavy exhales, like something trying to imitate the rhythm of lungs but failing. The smell followed next, copper and rot, the scent of something that had been feeding in the dark. The sheriff raised his gun and whispered, "Come out now." No answer, only silence. Then, a branch snapped to his left, another behind them. They weren't alone. They were surrounded. When the creature finally moved into the beam of light, the deputy's hand froze. The eyes came first, yellow and rimmed in red, shining with a cold, hateful intelligence. The shape that followed was worse, tall, nearly 7 feet, the body thick like a bear's but standing upright, patches of fur missing as if burned away. The snout was elongated, the teeth slicked with something dark. Its chest moved like a bellows, and for a moment, neither man breathed. Then it screamed. The sound hit them like a physical blow, a woman's voice. Pitched wrong, breaking into a shriek that seemed to tear through the treetops. The deputy fired once, the muzzle flash lighting the trees, but the creature didn't fall. It turned its head sharply, eyes narrowing, and with one motion, it charged. They ran. Branches tore at their faces. Tom stumbled, screamed that it was behind them, but the deputy didn't look back. His flashlight beamed. Chicago, winter of 1978. The wind that year was cruel, the kind that howled through alleys and froze rivers solid overnight. For cab drivers, it was a lonely season, the kind of nights where the radio static felt louder than your own heartbeat. Tom Novak had been driving the same route for years, Archer Avenue, just outside of Justice, Illinois. It was a long, dim stretch of road lined with frozen fields and skeletal trees. At the far end sat Resurrection Cemetery, its wrought iron gates blackened by time. Tom always turned his eyes from it when he passed. That night, he didn't get the chance. It was close to midnight when he saw her. A girl stood by the roadside in the snow. No coat, no purse, just a pale white prom dress clinging to her like silk ice. She was barefoot, her hair long and wet stuck to her neck. Tom slowed the cab, assuming she'd been in some kind of accident. But when his headlights hit her face, she didn't flinch. She just stared, blank, expressionless, but with eyes so glassy they seemed to catch every flicker of light. He rolled down his window. "You all right, miss?" he asked. Her lips moved slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Can you take me home?" He nodded, and she slid into the back seat without a sound. The smell of damp earth followed her in. As they drove, the heater fogged the windows and the world outside vanished into swirling snow. Tom checked the mirror once. She was sitting perfectly still, hands folded on her lap, staring straight ahead. No shiver, no movement. After a few minutes, he asked, "Where to?" She gave an address near Archer and 43rd. He knew it. Old neighborhood, quiet, full of crumbling houses. He drove in silence, but something about the girl unsettled him. Her skin was almost luminescent in the dashboard light, her breath invisible in the cold. He glanced in the mirror again. She was gone. The cab swerved, tires shrieking on ice. He turned in his seat. The back was empty. No footprints on the mat, no sound of a door opening, just that smell of cold soil fading away. Tom sat there shaking, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. Then he noticed something, a faint smear on the rear window, the shape of a handprint, small and wet, like it had been pressed there moments ago. He drove straight to the address she'd given him anyway. Heart hammering, an elderly woman answered the door, wrapped in a shawl. When Tom described the girl, her eyes filled with tears before he even finished. "That sounds like Mary," she whispered. "My daughter. She died 40 years ago on her way home from a dance, right near the cemetery." Tom didn't believe her at first, couldn't. But curiosity ate at him. The next night, he drove the same route again, past the cemetery gates. The air felt heavy still. His headlights swept over the fence, and for a fraction of a second, he saw her, standing inside the gate this time. Same white dress, same frozen stare, one hand resting on the iron bars as if waiting to be let out. The next morning, Tom turned in his cab keys. He said he'd never drive nights again. In the years since, dozens have reported her. Drivers, joggers, even police officers have claimed to see a girl in white walking along Archer Avenue, sometimes asking for a ride, sometimes just staring through the fog. Each time she vanishes before sunrise. Each time the air smells faintly of lilacs and damp soil. The locals call her Resurrection Mary, but no one can agree on what she is. A lost soul trying to go home or something bound to that bridge, replaying her last moments forever. If you ever find yourself driving that way after midnight, and you see a girl in white standing alone by the roadside, don't stop, because she's still waiting for a ride she'll never finish. For weeks after Tom's encounter, Archer Avenue changed. The regulars, cabbies, night shift workers, factory men heading home, started whispering about the girl. They all described her differently, but the details always converged. White dress, barefoot, and eyes that didn't blink. One night, another driver named Pete Harmon radioed in around 1:40 a.m. His voice was trembling. He said there was a girl standing in the middle of the road near the Willow Bridge, staring straight at his car. He tried honking. She didn't move. When he swerved to avoid her, his headlights caught something that made his stomach turn. Her face wasn't facing him anymore, but the eyes were rolled white, following the light even as her head turned away. He hit the brakes, but by the time he jumped out, she was gone. No footprints, No sound but the river beneath the bridge. After reports started piling up, the Justice Police Department sent out 2 cruisers to patrol the cemetery stretch. The first night, nothing happened. The second, an officer claimed his dashboard camera flickered with static the moment they drove past the gates. And in that half-second distortion, there was a shape standing on the roadside. When he paused the footage, the screen showed a silhouette of a woman leaning toward the car, one hand reaching out, her mouth slightly open. They dismissed it as light interference, but the officer who filmed it quit within the month. Locals began visiting the cemetery at night, bringing flowers and old photos, daring each other to call out her name. Mary. They said sometimes, if you whispered it 3 times by the gate, the iron would frost over. Sometimes the frost would form a handprint. The caretaker, an old man named Russell, told a journalist in 1981 that the front gate had been mysteriously bent outward, as if something inside had tried to push its way out. He repaired it 3 times. It kept happening, always at night. The bends were too strong to be caused by wind or human strength. Each time the shape was the same height, shoulder level to a woman of about 5'4". In 1984, a young couple claimed to have picked her up again. They were driving home from a wedding, the girl in the white dress walking alone in the middle of the lane, head bowed. She looked lost, the husband said. We stopped, asked where she was headed. She said, I need to go home. They drove her down Archer Avenue, same as Tom once had. She didn't talk much, the wife added, but the air felt colder. I could see my breath even with the heater on. When they passed the cemetery gates, she turned her head sharply toward them and whispered, I'm home. And then she was gone. Witnesses described the same strange aftermath. The smell of earth, frost on the windshield, radios cutting out. Some say she leaves behind muddy footprints that fade after minutes. Others claim they've seen her dancing under the moonlight between the gravestones, her dress rippling as if underwater. Folklorists tried to trace the origin. They found an obituary, Mary Bregovi, died March 11, 1934. Car crash returning from a dance hall. Buried in Resurrection Cemetery, same area, same age, same description. But the grave was moved twice due to renovations. And now, nobody's sure which plot is truly hers. Drivers still call dispatch about her, and the most recent report coming as late as 2019. A trucker heading toward Justice said he saw a woman waving her arms on the bridge just before dawn. He slowed down, but she vanished into the fog. He didn't stop, but when he checked his rearview mirror, the condensation on the glass spelled out one word: home. Some believe she appears only to those who are lost, spiritually. Emotionally, people wandering through their own kind of purgatory. Others say she's a warning, an omen that something bad will happen on that road. A few think she doesn't realize she's dead at all, just a girl endlessly trying to finish a ride that never ends. But the locals know better. They say that bridge was where she died, and that some nights when the river freezes over, you can still hear the faint crunch of barefoot steps on the ice, moving toward the road. Sometimes there's a reflection on the water. Sometimes it looks back. So if you're ever driving along Archer Avenue after midnight and you see a young woman in a white dress, her skin pale against the dark, keep your eyes forward. Because if you meet hers in the mirror, she might decide to ride along. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A small river town caught between the whisper of the Ohio River and the rolling Black Hills. The kind of place that looks peaceful from a distance, but feels heavy when you're there. As if the land itself remembers something you don't. It began quietly. November 1966, 5 gravediggers working late near Clendenin saw something above the trees. They said it looked like a man with wings. It hovered just long enough for them to see the eyes, red, glowing, unblinking. Then it rose into the clouds and vanished. They didn't talk about it publicly, not yet. But over the next year, Point Pleasant would become something else entirely. A place where the line between nightmare and reality disappeared under the shadow of a bridge. 1 year later, Roger and Linda Scarberry were driving near the abandoned TNT plant, a sprawling maze of tunnels and concrete domes left over from World War II, now reclaimed by woods and silence. It was close to midnight when Linda saw something crouched by the roadside, just past the tree line. "At first I thought it was a man," she said later, "but the way it stood up." "No man moves like that." It was over 7 feet tall, gray-skinned, its wings folded tight against its back. When the headlights hit it, the eyes lit up blood red, 2 burning orbs locked straight on them. Then it spread its wings. The creature lifted into the air with a shriek like tearing metal and followed their car, chasing them down Route 62 at over 100 miles per hour. It didn't flap. It glided, smooth and steady, keeping pace with their taillights. The couple barely made it back to town. When police arrived, the ground where it had stood was burned, the gravel blackened in a perfect circle. In the days that followed, sightings exploded. A group of teenagers saw it perched on the courthouse roof. A contractor swore it landed on the hood of his car and cracked the windshield with one clawed hand. Dogs went missing, car batteries drained overnight. People claimed their televisions and radios filled with static whenever those red eyes appeared nearby. Locals started calling it the bird, but soon another name took hold, Mothman. The papers loved it. The headlines grew louder. But behind the stories, fear spread quietly. Fear that this wasn't just a creature, that it was a warning. Then came the dreams. Dozens of residents, ordinary people, began reporting nightmares about a collapsing bridge. Some saw cars sinking into dark water. Others heard screams, metal twisting. A few said they saw a figure with wings hovering above it all, watching. Police dismissed it as hysteria. The sheriff himself said, "People see what they want to see." But on December 15, 1967, at 5:04 p.m. during rush hour, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed into the icy river. 46 people died. In the chaos that followed, something stranger happened. Witnesses claimed that just minutes before the collapse, they saw a dark figure standing on the bridge cables, eyes glowing red through the fog. After the disaster, no one ever saw the Mothman again, at least not there. Investigators blamed a failed suspension chain for the collapse. Engineers signed off on the report, but for the people of Point Pleasant, it never explained the rest. The dreams, the power outages, the circles of scorched ground, the eyes in the dark. Some believe the creature wasn't evil, that it came to warn them, that it tried to stop what was coming, but humans weren't meant to understand its language. Others believe it caused the disaster, a harbinger of death, feeding on fear, marking the town with tragedy. But those who were there still say the same thing. Once you've seen those eyes, you never forget them. Even today, truckers on Route 62 claim that on foggy nights, when they pass the ruins of the old bridge, their radios fill with static. Sometimes headlights catch the reflection of something tall standing near the tree line, watching, unmoving. And sometimes, when the wind shifts, they swear they hear wings. The town built a statue to it now, the Mothman Memorial, right in the middle of Point Pleasant. Tourists come and take pictures. They laugh, but the locals don't stay out after dark. Because the night before the bridge fell, every dog in town barked at the same moment. Every light flickered, and someone, no one knows who, called the police to report a man with wings standing on the hill. When they arrived, the ground was still warm. And on the steel beam by the water, someone, or something, had left 2 long scorch marks, side by side, like where wings had once been. In the days after the Silver Bridge collapsed, Point Pleasant was unrecognizable. The air smelled like burnt steel and river water. Recovery teams worked for weeks, pulling twisted metal and frozen bodies from the Ohio River. Some victims were never found at all. Yet amid the grief, a strange kind of quiet spread through town. Radios that had been plagued with static returned to normal. No one reported glowing eyes, no dark figures by the road. It was as if whatever had haunted Point Pleasant had vanished, satisfied or spent. But for those who had seen it, life never went back to normal. Linda Scarberry, one of the first witnesses, told investigators she began waking up at 3:15 a.m. every night for months after the incident. She'd find her dog growling at the window, staring toward the river. Sometimes she'd smell ozone, sharp, electric, like the air before lightning. Sometimes her phone would ring once and stop. Once she heard wings, massive, rhythmic, brushing against her roof. Her husband thought she was losing her mind, until the night he saw it too. He said it wasn't flying. It was standing on their barn roof, crouched, head tilted toward their window, red eyes glowing like embers. They left Point Pleasant within the year. Newspaper reporters, paranormal investigators, and even men claiming to be from the government descended on the town. One of them, a journalist named John Keel, began collecting testimonies. He noticed a disturbing pattern. People who saw the Mothman often received strange phone calls afterward, garbled voices that seemed mechanical, repeating words that didn't make sense. Others reported visits from men in black suits, pale-faced, emotionless, asking detailed questions about what they'd seen, warning them not to talk. One farmer claimed one of those men appeared at his door late one evening, asking if the winged man still walked the hills. The farmer refused to speak, and the man smiled, a slow, wrong kind of smile, before walking off into the woods. The snow that night showed no footprints. Years passed, but the stories didn't stop. In 1978, a truck driver reported seeing two burning red eyes reflected in his headlights near the Ohio River Bridge site. In 1983, a fisherman claimed something dark surfaced beside his boat, the size of a man, with shoulders broader than any human. He left his nets in the water and never returned to the river again. And then there were the photographs. A handful of them surfaced in the 90s, blurry, grainy images taken by tourists and locals. In some, the figure appeared only after the photo was developed. A dark outline with something like wings, watching from distant hills. Experts dismissed them as shadows or double exposures. But when a local historian compared the images to sketches from 1966, the silhouettes were nearly identical. In 2007, 4 decades after the tragedy, something strange happened again. Construction crews repairing the bridge site found a rusted steel beam etched with what looked like claw marks, long, even gouges, perfectly parallel, as if carved by talons. The metal had oxidized around the marks, meaning they'd been there for decades. No one could explain it. That night, 2 workers swore they saw a pair of red lights hovering above the river, about 20 feet apart, moving slowly against the current before fading into the fog. They never came forward officially, but their co-workers noticed both men quit within a week. Today, Point Pleasant has embraced its legend. There's a festival, a museum, even a bronze statue of the Mothman standing tall in the town square. Tourists come for photos, for souvenirs, for fun. But the older locals don't laugh. They remember the screams that night on the bridge, the cold that settled in afterward, and the way the town felt empty, like something had been taken from it. Ask them quietly, and they'll tell you, the Mothman wasn't a monster. It was a warning. Truckers along the Appalachian routes still whisper about seeing it. They call it the Watcher. Some say it's been spotted before other disasters, the Chernobyl meltdown, the I-35 bridge collapse in Minnesota, the Fukushima tsunami. Always the same pattern. Red eyes, metallic screeches, a feeling of being watched just before everything falls apart. No one can prove it. But when the air hums low, Arizona desert, 2013. Endless red earth, a horizon that never moves, and silence so wide, it starts to feel alive. Officer Daniel Yazzie had been with the Navajo Nation Police for 12 years. He'd seen wrecks, domestic calls, livestock gone missing, nothing unusual. Until one night, he got a call from dispatch around 2:37 a.m. Possible pedestrian on Highway 87. Caller says there's a man running in the road. That alone was strange. The nearest house was miles away, and the desert gets cold enough to kill a man by dawn. Yazzie drove out. The radio crackled every few minutes, static louder than the voice on the other end. He thought it was the storm building on the horizon, lightning flashing silently miles off in the dark. After 30 minutes, he saw it. Something was on the road ahead, but it wasn't running. It was crawling. He slowed the cruiser, headlights stretching across the asphalt. The shape was wrong. Too thin, too fast, too low to the ground. When his high beams hit it, the thing stopped, frozen mid-crawl. For a moment, Yazzie thought it was a coyote, until it stood up. The thing straightened, rising on two legs, its joints bending backward. Skin pale, stretched tight like leather pulled too far, it turned its head toward him, slow, deliberate, and its face looked human, but not right. Eyes too wide, mouth too long, and it smiled. Yazzie reached for his spotlight, but the beam flickered out the second he turned it on. The radio cut too, static screaming through the speakers. He could hear it breathing now, raspy, uneven. The smell of rot filled the cab. Then the thing whispered something. 3 words, in perfect English. "Turn the lights off," he floored it. Tires squealed, headlights cutting through sand as he spun around and sped back toward Chinley. The thing ran beside the car for nearly half a mile, on all fours, keeping pace at 70 miles an hour. Then it veered into the desert and vanished into the dark. When he made it back to the station, he was shaking so badly he couldn't fill out his report. His dashboard camera had recorded everything, the static, the lights, even a glimpse of a pale shape sprinting beside the cruiser. He handed the footage to his supervisor. The next morning it was gone. They told him it had been misplaced. But Yazzie knew better. The elders had warned about things like that, Yinald Lushi, the skinwalkers. Witches who could shed their skin, take the form of beasts, and walk between the worlds of man and spirit. He'd grown up hearing the stories, but never believed them. Until now. He took 2 weeks leave, but the calls kept coming in. Truckers on Highway 87 reported something chasing their rigs at night. Livestock found mutilated, no tracks, no blood trail. And then there were the voices, faint, carried on the desert wind. A man named Calvin Begay said he heard his dead brother calling his name outside his trailer one night. He opened the door, saw something standing in the sand wearing his brother's clothes. He slammed the door and prayed until sunrise. When he finally looked out, the footprints were backward. By March, officers stopped taking the reports publicly. Unofficially, they shared stories in whispers. One deputy said he followed a set of animal tracks that turned human halfway up a hill. Another swore he saw something watching him from a distance, crouched in the brush, imitating the sound of his own voice. Then came the final call. A rancher near the edge of the reservation reported a man screaming on the mesa. When officers arrived, they found nothing. No tracks, no blood, no man. But every radio and body cam malfunctioned. The only thing they recorded was wind, strong, steady, and whispering in a dozen voices at once. When they played it back later, one voice cut through clearly, deeper than the rest. "You shouldn't have come here." Yazzie transferred a month later. He never spoke publicly about that night again. But another officer, a rookie who inherited his patrol route, said sometimes, on long desert shifts, his radio still fills with static near mile marker 212. And once, just before dawn, he heard a voice through the interference. It sounded like Yazzie's. It said, "Turn the lights off." To this day, no one drives Highway 87 alone after midnight. Not the locals, not the cops, not the truckers. Because on nights when the wind rises and the air smells like iron, they say you can still see it. A pale, jointed figure keeping pace with your car, its mouth open in a grin that doesn't move when it speaks. And if you hear your own voice call your name from the dark, don't answer. The following weeks after Officer Yazzie's transfer, something began to change in the small police substation in Chinley. Dispatchers whispered about strange interference, bursts of static, faint laughter, and voices saying names that belonged to no one on the shift. Calls would come in, no number, no trace, just a single message that repeated every few nights. A woman's voice, cracked and dry. "He took my skin." The younger officers laughed it off at first. The older ones didn't. They burned cedar and juniper near the radio room every evening. Old protection rights most outsiders dismissed as superstition. But the interference didn't stop. It got worse. One night, Deputy Ben Torres, a non-Navajo assigned to Yazzie's old route, came in white as bone. He'd found something on the side of Highway 87, a half-buried police badge. Number 247, Yazzy's number. Only Yazzie had turned his in when he left. The edges of the metal were scorched, the back engraved with something that wasn't part of the original issue. 5 deep scratches that crossed like claw marks. 2 nights later, Torres was gone. His cruiser was discovered idling at the edge of the desert. Driver's side door wide open, engine running. Radio whispering fragments of speech that sounded like multiple voices layered on top of one another. The body cam footage was only 6 minutes long. At first, it showed Torres stopping to investigate what looked like a naked figure kneeling in the sand. Then, without warning, the figure stood up. Bones snapping audibly, limbs elongating like wire being pulled tight. Its face was featureless. Torres screamed, dropped the camera, and ran. The last thing recorded before the feed cut to static was a human-shaped blur on all fours, moving impossibly fast. They found no trace of him. Not his gun, not his radio, not his shoes. Just the badge, Yazzy's, placed neatly on the hood of the cruiser. The elders gathered at the community center that week. They said the land had been disturbed, that something old and patient had been awoken by the arrogance of men who tried to chase it with headlights and guns. They called it by its forbidden name, Skinwalker, a witch who traded humanity for the power to move between shapes and shadows. But this one, they said, was ancient. It didn't hunt for food. It hunted for recognition. It wanted people to know it was there. By then, word had spread among the highway patrol. Truckers began taking alternate routes, even if it added hours to their haul. Tourists stopped camping near the mesas, and the desert nights grew quieter than anyone could remember. Not even the coyotes howled anymore. 3 months later, Yazzie received a letter. No return address, just his name scrawled in black ink. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed the side of his old patrol cruiser, half buried in sand. And behind it, standing in the dim wash of headlights, was a shape, tall, thin, and almost human. Across the bottom, written in red marker, were 3 words. "You left me." Yazzie burned the photo that night. He told no one, but he began hearing it again, faintly at first, the whisper that had haunted his patrols years earlier. It came through his television when the screen went dark, through the static between radio stations, sometimes through the hum of his refrigerator late at night. Always the same phrase, always in the same rasping, broken English, "Turn the lights off." In 2015, 2 hikers reported finding a rusted police cruiser deep in the desert, more than 40 miles from the highway. The number plate had been sanded down to the bare metal. Inside, the seatbelts were shredded, the steering wheel missing, and the dashboard camera melted into the plastic. They left it untouched. When investigators returned days later, it was gone. Satellite images later showed the faint impression of tire tracks, leading off into the dunes, then disappearing entirely. Locals say the wind in that part of the desert sounds different now. The desert at night is supposed to be quiet, but there's a kind of silence out there that isn't peaceful. It's watching. The kind that makes you keep the radio on just to hear another voice. In November 2001, trucker Henry Lasker was hauling a late shipment through a stretch of Nevada highway that most drivers avoided after dark. He'd been driving 16 hours straight from Sacramento to Albuquerque. By the time the fuel gauge dipped below a quarter tank, his eyes burned from staring at the same 2 white lines in his headlights. He saw a small rest stop sign ahead, faded, half buried in dust. 1 pump, 1 soda machine, 1 flickering light. He pulled in. The desert wind rolled against his rig, dry and electric. He killed the engine, climbed down, and stretched under the harsh yellow glow of the light. And that's when he noticed the smell, faint, metallic, like rain that never came. The pump didn't work. Neither did the phone booth. So Henry sat in the cab to rest his eyes, the soft hum of the truck's battery the only sound in the world. He was drifting to sleep when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the driver's window. He jolted up, checked the mirror. No one. Another knock, louder this time, and then a voice. "Sir, we need help." 2 kids stood by the truck. A boy and a girl, maybe 12. Pale skin, dark hair, dressed too lightly for the cold. The girl was crying softly. The boy stared straight ahead, unblinking. Henry leaned over and cracked the window an inch. "Where are your parents?" The boy spoke, calm, flat. "We got lost. We can't find our house, Henry felt his stomach knot. There was something off about how they stood. Too still, too symmetrical. Their voices didn't echo right in the cold air. Then the boy said, "Can we come inside?" "We're cold." That's when Henry saw their eyes. Black, not dark brown. Black. No whites, no pupils. Just bottomless void. He slammed the window shut, threw the truck into gear, and gunned it out of the lot so fast the trailer almost jackknifed. The kids didn't move, didn't run. Just stood there in the glow of the rear lights, watching. He didn't look back. Not until 5 miles later, when something moved in the corner of his mirror. A shape walking along the shoulder of the highway, keeping pace with the rig. He turned on the CB radio, hands shaking. "Anyone near mile marker 174? I don't know what I've got. Kids, something's wrong with them." Only static replied. Then, through the static, a whisper. "Let us in." He hit the brakes hard. For a second, everything went silent, even the engine. Then his radio let out a shriek. Not feedback, not human. Something behind the frequency, like a scream layered under metal scraping. He turned the headlights off, heart pounding. The desert outside was a black ocean. The moon had vanished behind thick clouds, and there they were, standing in front of the truck, closer now, their faces expressionless. The girl tilted her head, and for the first time, Henry realized they weren't breathing. "Sir," the boy said again, "please." "We can't come in unless you tell us we can." That's when Henry floored it, the roar of the engine tearing through the silence. The figures didn't move aside. He drove straight through. There was no impact, nothing. When he looked in the mirror, the road was empty. Henry didn't stop until dawn. He pulled into a diner near Ely, pale as death. The waitress said he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He didn't answer. He just asked if there were any kids missing in the area. She frowned. "Kids? No, honey. Not around here. Not for a long time." He told her everything. The knocking, the eyes, the voices. She listened quietly, then asked where it happened. When he told her, she froze. "That rest stop's been closed since '88, she said. "There was a murder there. Whole family, 2 kids. Henry called the sheriff's office that afternoon. They confirmed it. The Thompsons, a family of 4, found dead at that rest stop 13 years earlier. The kids were never recovered. And every few years, truckers still reported seeing children waving down cars on that same stretch of road. He never drove nights again. Sold his rig 2 years later. But even after retirement, he'd wake in the middle of the night to faint tapping sounds on his window. Always 3 knocks. Always just before 3 a.m. When he moved to Oregon, the knocking followed him. He started sleeping with the lights on. Neighbors said they sometimes saw 2 children standing at the edge of his driveway, staring at his house. Every dog in the neighborhood would start howling when they appeared. Henry died in 2014. A heart attack, they said. He was found sitting in his recliner, television static filling the room. The remote was still in his hand, and on the glass of the living room window, faint, child-sized handprints. To this day, truckers along Highway 50, the loneliest road in America, still talk about the black-eyed kids. They appear at gas stations, rest stops, or on the side of the road, always in pairs, always asking for help, always polite. But if you let them in, even for a second, you're never seen again. So if you ever hear soft knocking on your window when you're miles from anywhere, and a small voice says, "Sir, we need help," don't answer. Don't open the door. And whatever you do, never look them in the eyes. For weeks after Henry's story spread among long-haul truckers, that stretch of Nevada highway became known as the Children's Mile. Some refused to drive it altogether. Others crossed it only in daylight, convoying in groups like they were traveling through enemy territory. At first, the reports came slow. A few strange CB transmissions, odd sightings. But by spring of 2002, things escalated. Every truck stop from Fallon to Ely had a story. A man named Russ Big Red McKinney told one that stuck. He'd been hauling livestock eastbound, near mile marker 172, the same spot where Henry saw them. His rig was older, the kind that rattled like bones when the wind hit right. It was near midnight when his CB radio came to life with a soft child's voice. "Can we ride with you, mister?" He thought it was a prank at first, some kid messing around on the band. Then came a knock on his passenger door, 3 dull thuds in perfect rhythm. He turned, expecting another driver. No one, just dust swirling under the mirror light. And then he heard it again. A whisper right outside the window. "Please, let us in." McKinney floored it. He said the knocking followed him for 8 straight miles, on both sides of the cab. When he finally pulled into Ely, there were no marks on the doors, no dents. Just 2 faint, greasy handprints that disappeared as soon as he touched them. He quit the road a month later, told his dispatcher he'd rather be broke than hear children in the wind again. But the strangest part came 2 years later. In 2004, when Nevada State Police responded to a 911 call from a tourist couple stranded outside Tonopah. Their report said they'd stopped to help 2 kids waving on the shoulder. When the couple opened the door, the kids just stood there, heads down, silent. Then both raised their faces at the same time. The wife screamed so loud it cut through the operator's headset. By the time officers arrived, the car doors were open, the headlights still on, but the couple was gone. Their phones, wallets, luggage, all untouched. The tire tracks led 30 feet off the road, then stopped in the middle of the desert, like the car had been lifted away. Locals said the area used to be a mining town in the late 1800s. Whole families died in cave-ins, disease, starvation. Some believed the black-eyed children weren't new at all, just something old, reappearing under new names. An old man named Elias Crane, a retired deputy who'd patrolled those roads in the 70s, came forward later that year. He said the first time he'd heard of the children was long before 2001. There was a report in 79, he said. A couple broke down near the rest stop, said 2. The backroads of rural Maine are not made for the faint-hearted. For miles, there's nothing but fog, pine, and the distant crackle of unseen branches in the dark. Locals say that when the mist rolls in from the coast, it's not just the air that changes, it's the sound. Voices travel differently, distances stretch, and sometimes lights appear where no road should exist. That's where James "Jimmy" Carver vanished. In October 1995, Jimmy was driving home from a late shift at the paper mill in Millinocket. He was 33, married, 2 kids, known around town as a reliable man. His route home was simple, 15 miles of Route 11, then a right turn onto an old logging trail that cut across Baxter State Forest. That trail, Wickham Road, had been closed since the 1970s after a series of fatal accidents and disappearances. But everyone in town knew it shaved 20 minutes off the drive. That night, it was raining. Cold, needling rain that turned the forest into a moving wall of mist. Jimmy called his wife Lisa at 10:47 p.m. to say he was heading home. He never made it. At 11:32, a state trooper patrolling near the forest saw strange lights flickering deep between the trees, pale yellow orbs moving in pairs. He thought it was another drunk hunter night riding with a spotlight, so he radioed it in and followed the glow. The trail was slick, winding, almost invisible under the fog. The deeper he drove, the stranger the lights behaved. They'd drift apart, then merge, always just ahead, as if leading him somewhere. When he reached a clearing, the lights suddenly vanished. No car, no tire marks, just wet pine needles and silence. Then, from the fog, came the low hum of an idling engine. The trooper stepped out, flashlight cutting through the mist. That's when he saw it. Jimmy Carver's pickup truck, headlights still on, driver's door open. The driver's seat was empty. But the radio was on, crackling softly with static. And through that static, a voice whispered, faint, breathless, panicked. "They're not lights." The interior of the truck was soaked, as if it had been left in the rain for hours. Jimmy's wallet and wedding ring were still on the dashboard. The keys dangled in the ignition. Footprints led away from the vehicle, barefoot, erratic, as though he'd stumbled into the woods. They went on for nearly 100 yards before they simply stopped. No drag marks, no blood, just the impression of one last step, and then nothing. Search teams combed the forest for 3 days. Dogs lost the scent in the same clearing where the lights were first seen. No body, no clothing, no trace. But every night during the search, the same thing happened. When the mist rose, the team would see faint orbs drifting just out of reach, yellow, white, sometimes blue. If anyone tried to follow them, the forest would swallow them in seconds. And when they stopped, the orbs would circle back, almost playful, hovering between the trees before fading away. Locals started calling them the Wickham Lights. Strange. Glowing orbs that appeared only in fog and only near the site of Jimmy's disappearance, but this wasn't new. An old newspaper article from 1936 described nearly identical sightings along the same trail. Hunters had reported lanterns floating through the fog, and every man who followed them vanished. Old-timers believed they were ghost lights, souls of those who died in the woods, luring the living to join them. Others said it was something older, will-o'-the-wisps, spirits of the lost, mimicking headlights to lead travelers astray. Then in 1997, two teenagers filming a camping trip in Baxter State Forest accidentally captured something that brought the story back. In the grainy VHS footage, the camera pans across the fog as one of them laughs nervously. Then, from the distance, a soft glow appears. Two orbs, moving side by side, just like car headlights. They get brighter, closer, until the fog fills the frame. You can hear one of the boys say, "Wait, I hear something." It sounds like breathing. The screen shakes, the camera falls, and the recording ends. Police later found their abandoned campsite. The tent was shredded. The flashlight batteries were drained, melted from the inside out. The camcorder was still on, recording static, except every 30 seconds the screen flickered, showing what looked like two human silhouettes standing in the fog. Over the years, more witnesses came forward. A park ranger swore he saw a line of lights following him along the service road one night, always in his mirrors, never in front. When he stopped the truck, they stopped too. When he moved again, they followed. Another woman said her husband disappeared while hunting near the same area. When they found his GPS unit, the last coordinates showed him walking in perfect circles for 6 hours, every step bringing him closer to the same clearing where Jimmy's truck had been found. At 3:06 a.m., his last voice note was recorded. You could hear him panting, whispering, "There's someone in the fog. It looks like me. Today, Wickham Road is sealed off. No entry, no maintenance, not even for rescue." But hikers still slip past the barriers drawn by curiosity or stupidity. Some return talking about the lights that followed them. Others don't come back at all, and every once in a while, Maine State Police get a call on stormy nights from drivers along Route 11. They say they see a pair of headlights cutting through the fog just ahead of them, moving too smooth, too perfect. No shadow, no driver visible inside. Sometimes those phantom lights lead cars off the main road into the trees. And if you stop, if you roll down your window and listen, you might hear it, the faint hum of an old pickup engine idling somewhere in the mist. And a voice, far away, whispering through the static of your radio. They're not lights. The storm that night had turned the Tennessee backroads into a winding maze of shadow and water. Lightning cracked across the sky, revealing forests that looked like they were bending inward, as if closing in on the asphalt. Every so often, a flash would light up the trees just long enough to catch a shape. Something hunched, something moving. But when the light faded, there was only the hiss of rain and the dull thrum of tires cutting through puddles. Marcus, a long-haul driver with 20 years on the road, had seen his share of weirdness. Deer that seemed to vanish mid-leap. Strangers appearing in the middle of nowhere. But nothing prepared him for the night he took that detour off I-40. The dispatcher said the main route was blocked by flooding. The back road was clear, but keep your eyes open, he'd added. In that way dispatchers sometimes do when they know more than they want to say. By midnight, Marcus was the only one out there. The wipers squealed against the windshield, fighting to keep up. He lit a cigarette, cracked the window, and immediately regretted it. The smell of wet pine and rot came rolling in like a wave. He could barely see 20 feet ahead, but the rhythmic pounding of rain was almost hypnotic. Then there was a sound, a dull thud from above. Not thunder, not a branch. It came from the roof. At first he thought he'd hit something. He pulled over, heart hammering, and killed the engine. The only sound was the ticking of rain cooling the hood. He waited. Then came the scraping, slow, deliberate, like nails dragging over metal. Marcus froze. The sound moved from the back of the cab toward the windshield. There's a place just outside Rhinelander, Wisconsin, a quiet stretch of forest that never seems to wake. Locals call it Deadwater Lake. It isn't on most maps, and the ones that do show it mark it faintly, as if even cartographers didn't want to draw attention to it. But the fishermen who've gone there, the ones who came back, they talk about something beneath that lake, something that watches from below the ice. or just under the reflection of the moon. The first reports started in the 1940s. A couple of loggers were cutting near the lake's edge when they found a rowboat drifting in circles. No oars, no sound, just spinning silently in the center of the water. When they went closer, they saw what looked like a face, pale and expressionless, staring up at them from beneath the surface. They thought it was a drowned man until it blinked. The story spread as they do in small towns. Hunters avoided the area, but over the decades, the lake began pulling in outsiders. Campers, photographers, curiosity seekers. Most left with nothing but mosquito bites and eerie stories about whispers on the wind, but a few never left at all. In 2009, 2 college students from Eau Claire, David and Amy, drove out there for a photography project on local legends. Their footage, what was recovered of it, is still one of the most disturbing things police have ever seen. The first clips were normal, laughing, setting up tents, drone shots of the still water. Then night fell. Around 2:17 a.m., the camera picked up ripples across the lake's surface, perfectly circular, as though someone were walking slowly through shallow water. David whispered that he thought he saw something moving beneath the reflection of the moon, like a pale shimmer. The camera zoomed in, focusing on the stillness, and then something surfaced. It wasn't a body. Not quite. It looked like a human face, but pressed thin, as if stretched under translucent skin. Its eyes were cloudy, unfocused. The mouth opened slowly, and the audio captured what sounded like a faint sucking noise, like air escaping from beneath ice. The camera shook violently, and the next few minutes were chaotic. Splashing, heavy breathing, a scream, then silence. When search teams arrived 2 days later, they found the tent, the car, and the camera near the shore. But no sign of David or Amy, just 2 sets of footprints leading into the water, and none coming back out. What terrified investigators the most, though, wasn't the footage or the missing students. It was what they found on the lake's bottom when divers went searching. About 20 feet down, among tangled reeds, they saw what appeared to be dozens of human-like shapes suspended vertically. Not floating, not sunk, just standing, as though the water itself held them up. Their faces were pale and bloated, mouths open, eyes staring. The divers surfaced in seconds, refusing to go back down. Locals believe the lake isn't just haunted. They think it's hungry. The legend says that long before settlers arrived, the Ojibwe people warned of a water spirit, the Bagwajanini, that punished those who disrespected the lakes and forests. It wasn't a monster, not at first, but something that guarded the balance between the living and the drowned. Over time, as logging, pollution, and greed poisoned the land, the spirit changed. It became a collector. The sheriff's office fenced off the area years ago, citing unstable ground, but that hasn't stopped people from sneaking in. Fishermen say they still hear soft knocking beneath their boats, like someone tapping from below. One hiker claimed he saw faces in the shallows. Looking up, dozens of them, all identical. And last winter, a drone pilot uploaded footage online showing the frozen surface of Deadwater Lake. At first, it just looked like cracked ice patterns. But when you look closely, when you pause at the 40-second mark, you can see them. Faint, pale outlines pressed beneath the ice, their mouths open as if mid-scream. The video was taken down within hours. The pilot never responded to comments. The lake sits still now, hidden behind warning signs and rusting fences. But the locals say that when the fog rolls low and the moon hits the water just right, you can still see faces moving beneath the surface, like trapped reflections waiting for someone to look too long. And if you listen carefully, you might hear that faint bubbling whisper that David's camera caught before it went dark, the sound of something deep below, opening its mouth again. By dawn, the fog had rolled in thick over Deadwater Lake, muffling the world in gray. Even the crows stayed silent. The search teams kept their distance at first, waiting for the divers to report back. When the first diver surfaced screaming, the others thought he'd had an equipment failure, until they saw his face. His mask was gone, his eyes wild, his mouth babbling nonsense. "They were looking back at me," he kept saying. "They're not dead. They're waiting." After that, no one went in again. The county quietly wrote off the disappearances as a tragic accident. The case file was sealed after an official equipment malfunction report. But one deputy, a man named Holloway, couldn't let it go. He'd seen the recovered footage before it was archived. He couldn't forget what he saw in the last seconds of that tape. The raw video never made it public, but a description leaked from someone who helped digitize the evidence. After the chaos in the tent, the camera fell on its side, half buried in mud. Rain hissed against the microphone. Then faintly you could hear David's voice, distorted by the wind. "Amy, don't move." "Don't look at it." A long pause followed. A gurgling sound, then silence. A few seconds later, the camera's lens refocused on the lake. Something was standing at the water's edge, just a few feet from where the camera lay. It was Amy, but wrong. Her face was gray-blue, her hair plastered to her skin, her eyes glassy. She turned her head mechanically, as if pulled by invisible strings, and stared directly into the lens. The shot froze there, still perfect, unbearable. Then she opened her mouth wider and wider until her jaw unhinged completely. The screen went black. That clip never made it to the public archives. Holloway said he saw it once, then never again. A few months later, he resigned and moved away, claiming Deadwater Lake had a pulse. There are other stories, some modern, some that go back nearly a century. In 1958, a man named Harold Fisk claimed to have seen faces rising out of the water at sunset. He said they spoke to him, whispering in voices like his dead relatives, begging him to join them. When his wife found him the next morning, he was knee-deep in the lake, murmuring to the water, eyes open, pupils dilated. He was still alive, but barely aware of who he was. He died a few weeks later in a psychiatric ward. In 1983, a small group of teenagers dared each other to swim at midnight. They recorded themselves with a VHS camcorder, laughing as they ran into the lake. The tape was later found half submerged in mud. The laughter turned to screams halfway through. One by one, each voice cut off until only the sound of water remained. Locals say the lake doesn't want to kill, it wants to keep. It traps what it touches, freezing people in the moment between drowning and breathing. That's why the divers saw those still, upright figures below the surface. They weren't floating corpses. They were held there, like the lake itself refused to let them go. A retired hydrologist, Dr. Eileen Cross, visited the site years later and found something unsettling. The lake's oxygen levels dropped sharply below 15 feet, far too low to support aquatic life. Yet on her sonar in the heart of rural Nebraska, where the horizon swallows the sky and the air smells like dust and husks, there's a place locals whisper about. A stretch of farmland off County Road 17 that no one's plowed in decades. Not because the soil's bad, not because of weather, but because of what people say comes out of the corn at night. Old farmers call it the singing field. The name sounds harmless, almost beautiful, until you know what it means. The legend says that on certain nights, especially when the moon is thin and the wind doesn't move, the field starts to hum. A low rhythmic sound like a lullaby sung by unseen voices. People who've heard it say it feels like the corn is breathing. The story begins in the 1960s when the Darnell family owned that land. They were ordinary folks, 3 kids, a farm dog, a modest house on a hill overlooking acres of corn. But everything changed the night their youngest, 9-year-old Emily, vanished. It was harvest season. The fields were dry and golden, the air thick with the smell of dust and diesel. Emily had been chasing the dog near the fence line around sunset. Her mother remembered hearing her laugh, faint but clear, carried by the wind. But when she called her back in, Emily didn't answer. They searched the property until dawn. The sheriff's men combed through every acre of corn, but there were no signs, no broken stalks, no footprints, nothing. It was as if she'd walked into the rows and never come out. A week later, her father claimed he heard her voice calling from the field at night. He ran outside, lantern in hand, calling her name. His wife followed, pleading for him to stop. But he didn't. He disappeared into the corn, and he didn't come back either. When they found him the next morning, he was standing in the middle of the rows, barefoot and soaked with dew. He was alive, but he couldn't speak, just humming that same lullaby. Doctors said it was trauma. The town said it was something else. They buried Emily's toys and locked the house. Within a year, the Darnells left Nebraska for good. The property was sold, then abandoned, then forgotten, until new owners tried to farm it again decades later. In 2004, a corporate agriculture company bought the land, ignoring the locals' warnings. The workers joked about the haunted cornfield, even camping on site to prove they weren't afraid. But on the second night, something strange happened. Around 2 a.m., they heard what sounded like children laughing in the distance. When one of the men shined his flashlight toward the noise, the beam cut through the stalks and reflected off something pale. Small figures stood between the rows, motionless. Their skin was the color of dried husks, their eyes hollow. The men shouted, but the figures didn't move. Then, in perfect unison, they tilted their heads toward the sound of the flashlight and smiled. The next morning, 2 of the workers were missing. Their tents were still zipped from the inside. Their boots were by the fire. In the mud between the rows, investigators found tiny barefoot prints, dozens of them, circling the camp. A few years later, a local radio host named Dan Miller decided to investigate the site for a Halloween segment. He brought recording gear, night vision, and a friend to operate the camera. They reached the old Darnell farm at sundown. The house was a ruin, roof caved in, wallpaper peeling like skin. The cornfield still grew wild, swaying even when the air was still. The first few hours were uneventful. Crickets, the hum of power lines. Then, at 12:41 a.m., the recording picked up faint singing. At first, Dan thought it was static, but it grew louder, clearer. Children's voices. The song had words this time. Come play, come see, come follow me. The camera turned toward the field. And there they were, shapes small and gray, standing in the corn. Their faces blank, but somehow familiar, as if carved from memory. One of them stepped closer to the camera, close enough for the night vision to catch its face. Its eyes were black pits, its mouth twisted into a grotesque smile, and when it opened, dirt poured out instead of words. Dan dropped the camera. You can hear him running, his breath ragged, corn snapping behind him. The footage ends with him shouting, "They're not kids! They're not kids!" His truck was found idling on the road the next morning. The driver's door was open. Dan's friend was still inside, staring straight ahead, whispering that lullaby over and over again. Dan himself was found 2 miles away, in the middle of another field, standing barefoot, humming softly to the wind. He never spoke again. Locals say the children in the corn aren't ghosts. They're echoes, shadows of lives claimed by the land. Some think it started with Emily and spread like a sickness, carried by the roots. Others say the soil itself remembers every child lost on the prairie and gives them form when the moon is thin. Sometimes, on windless nights, drivers on County Road 17 say they see small figures at the edge of their headlights, waving them down. The smart ones don't stop. Those who do never see the road again. And if you're ever out there, somewhere between dusk and dawn, and the wind goes still, listen carefully. If you hear children laughing in the corn, don't look for where it's coming from. Just keep driving, because the moment you stop, the moment you turn your head, they'll be standing right there, smiling, waiting for you to join the harvest. By the next morning, the town had already started whispering about what happened to Dan Miller. The sheriff's report said, psychological breakdown. But the people who lived near County Road 17 knew better. They'd seen too many strange things in that field. Some swore they could still hear Dan's voice on the wind, not screaming, not calling for help, but singing that same lullaby, as if he'd joined them. After the investigation, the company that owned the land sealed it off. A wire fence went up, no trespassing signs nailed every few yards. But even then, travelers passing by at night reported seeing little handprints on their windshields, smudged and muddy, as if something small had reached out from the darkness to touch the glass. Retired deputy named John Harper was one of the few who'd been at the original Darnell search in 1962. When he heard about the recent disappearances, he went back to the old field. Despite being 83 and nearly blind, he said he needed to see if they were still there. What happened next is only known because of the recorder Harper carried in his pocket, a small cassette device he used for notes. The tape was found near his truck, which was still running, headlights pointed toward the corn. The recording starts with static, then his voice. October 18th, Darnell Place. Still smells like rain and diesel, same as before. I don't expect to find much. Maybe I just need to hear the silence again. Minutes pass. The sound of his footsteps crunching through dried husks echoes faintly. Then a pause. The tape crackles. You can hear faint singing in the background, distant but clear enough to make out the words, "Come play, come see, come follow me," he whispers. "Emily?" There's a shift in the wind. a soft rustle like dozens of small bodies moving just out of sight. The next minute of the tape is chaos. The sound of the corn whipping, his breathing heavy. Then something else, laughter. Not playful, wet, broken. The kind of laughter that doesn't come from lungs, but from somewhere deeper. Then Harper's voice again, trembling. "I see you." "God help me, I see you." Silence follows for exactly 13 seconds. Then a soft, childlike voice right next to the recorder says, "We remember you." The tape ends there. When a search team found his body the next morning, it was standing upright in the center of the field, facing east, eyes open, barefoot, just like all the others. The medical examiner couldn't explain the absence of soil beneath his feet, as if he hadn't walked there, but had risen up from the ground. After Harper's death, the local authorities finally gave up, pretending it was nothing. The Darnell farm was buried under tons of gravel and marked as an environmental hazard. The corn was burned, the soil turned over, but no one stayed long during the process. Workers said the machinery would stop on its own, the radios would go dead, and at dusk they'd hear faint singing through their ear protection. And when the fires burned hottest, several witnesses said they saw small figures standing in the smoke, not burning, just watching. Even now, people say the field grows back. Every few years, green shoots appear through the gravel, spreading faster than they should. Those who cut them down say the stalks bleed when snapped. A photographer once tried to capture the sight from the air. He quit when he noticed something in the footage, a pattern in the corn forming what looked like faces. Dozens of them, stretching across the field, mouths open in silent screams. The last known person to investigate was a YouTuber who ran a small paranormal channel. He live-streamed his trip, laughing off the old stories. The chat was full of jokes, until the signal began to flicker. The last few seconds of the stream showed him turning toward the sound of children singing behind him. His flashlight caught something pale between the stalks. Then the feed cut. When police arrived 2 days later, they found his phone half buried in the soil, still recording. In the background, you can faintly hear laughter and a voice whispering, "He stayed." That phrase has become something of a warning among locals. He stayed, meaning he looked too long, listened too closely, walked too far into the field. The corn doesn't take you violently, it invites you. It hums until you start humming back. To this day, no crops grow successfully on that stretch of land, but at night, the wind carries the smell of fresh earth and rain. There's a road that runs through the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, a winding, mist-shrouded path that locals call Devil's Backbone. Few dare to drive it after midnight, not because of bandits or bears, but because of something far older, far darker. Travelers whisper of the thing that walks beside you, a shape that mirrors your movements, just out of sight, pacing your car no matter how fast you go. Some say it's a shadow of the mountain itself, others that it's something born from the tragedies buried deep within the soil. The first known report came in 1978 from a man named Paul Haynes, a delivery driver who worked nights for a logging company. His route took him through the mountain passes, steep cliffs, tight turns, and endless darkness. Paul was used to isolation, but one foggy night in October, something changed. He said it began as a flicker, a movement just beyond his driver's side window. At first, he thought it was the shifting of his headlights through the trees. But then it kept pace. Mile after mile, every time he glanced to the left, he caught the faint outline of something running alongside his truck. He couldn't make out a face or body, only a tall, human-like shadow that moved fluidly, its form stretching unnaturally with every bend in the road. Paul sped up, thinking maybe it was an illusion. But the shape didn't fall behind. It matched his speed perfectly. When he slowed at a sharp curve, it slowed too. When he accelerated, it surged forward. And then, as he approached an old wooden bridge, the figure darted in front of his truck and disappeared into the fog. His headlights flickered violently and his engine sputtered, before roaring back to life just as he crossed the bridge. Paul made it back to town, pale and shaking. He told his supervisor what happened, but they brushed it off, said it was exhaustion or nerves. Yet a week later, another driver, Earl Thompson, refused to take the same route after claiming he'd seen something black as tar running beside him for nearly 10 miles. Over the years, the legend of the shadow on the road grew. Locals say it's not just one creature, but the spirit of those who died building the mountain highway. During construction in the 1930s, at least 8 men reportedly fell from the cliffs or were buried during a rock slide that sealed an unfinished tunnel. The site was never excavated. In 1999, a pair of hikers camping near the old bridge reported hearing heavy, 2-legged footsteps circling their tent. When they shined their flashlight, they saw nothing, yet the footsteps continued, pacing just beyond the edge of the light. In the morning, they found large human-like footprints in the mud, leading toward the road, then stopping abruptly as if the thing had vanished mid-stride. Then there's the dash cam footage. In 2015, a trucker named Calvin Briggs uploaded a short video online before deleting it hours later. The clip showed a dark mountain road, rain pouring heavily, windshield wipers squeaking. Around the 27-second mark, something darted across the road, tall, lean, almost humanoid, but moving in a jerking, unnatural motion. Some viewers slowed the footage and claimed to see its face, hollow eyes, and a mouth stretched wide as if screaming. Others said it was just shadows and rain. Briggs disappeared a month later. His truck was found parked on the Devil's Backbone, headlights still on, driver's door open. Inside, his dashcam had been ripped from its mount, the cord still swinging. The last frame of the footage, recovered by police, showed the empty road and the faint reflection of something tall standing just behind the truck. Today, locals advise travelers never to stop on that stretch of road after dark. If you see movement in your peripheral vision, keep driving. Don't slow down. Don't look directly at it. They say if you do, it begins to follow you. Not just on that road, but wherever you go. Some believe it's drawn to fear, feeding on the energy of those who travel alone. Others think it's the lingering curse of the workers, who never made it home, their shadows condemned to walk the road forever. There are even stories of it appearing miles away from the Appalachians on other lonely highways across the states. People describe the same feeling, the sound of something running beside the car, keeping perfect pace, a presence that never fully shows itself, but never truly leaves either. So if you ever find yourself driving down an empty mountain road at night, headlights cutting through the mist, engine humming steadily, and you start to feel like something's keeping up with you, step by step, just out of sight, don't look, because once you see it, it sees you too. And from that moment on, no matter where you drive, the shadow will always find a way to walk beside you. The Appalachian Mountains have always been a place of whispers. Locals say the fog there carries voices, soft murmurs that drift between the trees long after midnight. They talk of miners who never came back from the depths, of old rituals held deep in the hollows, and of something that still walks the mountain roads when the world is asleep. The old-timers call it the thing that walks beside you. Not a ghost, not quite a creature, but a presence. Something that lives in the dark corners between sight and sound. They say if you drive those winding mountain roads after midnight, especially the one they call Devil's Backbone, it will find you. It doesn't attack. It doesn't speak. It just keeps pace. For decades, the stories were dismissed as folklore, until too many people saw the same thing. In 1978, as records confirm, Paul Haynes, a 32-year-old logging driver, was the first to report it officially. He drove a long-haul truck through the Appalachians, moving timber from small mountain towns to the mills in Virginia. That October night, the air was cold and thick with fog, and Paul was alone on the Devil's Backbone. The radio had gone dead miles earlier, static swallowing every station. Around midnight, he noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. The dense trees along the roadside seemed to ripple, but only on one side. He slowed slightly, peering through the glass. Then he saw it. A tall, shadow-like figure pacing him perfectly, its outline flickering as though the light from his truck couldn't fully grasp it. It didn't run. It glided, its form bending unnaturally with the terrain. Every time his headlights hit it directly, it seemed to dissolve into the mist, only to reappear seconds later at the edge of vision. Paul pressed the accelerator, his truck growling as he hit 70 mph, but still, it kept up. He described the sound it made as soft, like cloth dragging through wet leaves. But under it, there was another sound. A faint breathing, heavy and uneven, almost in rhythm with the engine. When he reached the old wooden bridge, the creature lunged forward, directly into his path. His headlights caught it for a fraction of a second. It had the vague outline of a man, but impossibly tall, its limbs too long, its surface rippling like black smoke. Paul swerved hard, tires screeching, heart hammering, as the figure vanished into the fog. His headlights dimmed to near black before flickering back on. He made it to the nearest diner around 2 a.m., pale and trembling. Locals found him sitting in his truck, lights on, gripping the steering wheel with both hands. He never drove that route again. In the following years, more sightings surfaced. Truckers, hikers, night patrol officers, all describing the same thing, a shadow keeping pace with their vehicle. In 1983, a schoolteacher named Mary Lawson claimed she encountered it while driving home from a late parent-teacher meeting. Her car was small, an old Ford Pinto that barely held steady on those curves. She noticed something in her side mirror, a black form running beside her in the woods, perfectly level with her window. Mary later said it wasn't the movement that terrified her, but the eyes. She described them as holes, not lights, like absence made visible. When she reached the bridge, the figure stopped. Her car, however, didn't. It stalled completely. The engine died without warning. She sat in the silence for nearly 10 minutes, afraid to move, her hands trembling on the keys. And then she heard it, a low, steady tapping on the roof of her car. She looked up. The sound stopped, then one more slow tap. When she finally started the car again and drove off, she looked in the mirror and saw 2 handprints, long and black, pressed into the dust on her roof. By the 1990s, paranormal investigators had taken interest. The area surrounding Devil's Backbone became a hotspot for ghost hunters and cryptid researchers. One of them, Dr. Leonard Farrow, claimed the shadow entity might be linked to a geological anomaly, something about the magnetic fields and quartz-heavy rock creating visual distortions. But others disagreed. Locals pointed instead to a darker origin, the road's construction history. During the 1930s, a rockslide buried several workers alive inside an unfinished tunnel that was later sealed with concrete. That tunnel, now overgrown and half collapsed, sits directly beneath the section of road where most sightings occur. Old newspaper archives describe the accident in chilling detail. 8 men were confirmed dead. Their bodies were never recovered. And one witness, a foreman, reported that moments before the collapse, he saw shadows moving against the lantern light, even when no one was near. The legend took a new turn in 2015 when a trucker named Calvin Briggs uploaded a video clip online. It showed a dark road, rain pouring heavily, headlights slicing through the mist. At the 27-second mark, something darted across the road, tall, human-shaped, moving in short, jerking bursts. The headlights caught its arm for a moment, long, twisted, and featureless.